Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. There is one round of URC fixtures to go, and there is plenty to play for all four Irish provinces who are looking to improve their seeding or even qualify for the top 8 outright. I'm Will Slattery. I'm delighted to be joined for tonight's chat by Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, how are you?
Good, Will. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks. Lots to discuss tonight. Also delighted to be joined in studio by Rúaidhrí O'Connor. Rud, how are things?
Good, thanks.
Great to have you with us. Guys, a reminder that the Left Wing Podcast is sponsored by Energia. This weekend, Energia hope everyone will show up and support the Ireland women's team in their final Six Nations game against Scotland in the Aviva Stadium as the fixture looks to make history and set records. There will be family-friendly fan zones and a sign-making station at the stadium. For more information, go to Energia's social channels. Energia, think of the possibilities. Guys, as I mentioned, URC final round upcoming last weekend. Interesting weekend. Ulster 38, Stormers 38 kicked things off on Friday night. A really good end-to-end game up in Belfast. Then Leinster 31, Lions 7 in the Aviva Stadium on Saturday evening. Leinster pulling away in the back end of that game to get a bonus point victory. And then Connacht 26, Munster 7. Didn't really live up to the kind of blockbuster derby we had hoped for a couple of weeks out, but very impressive from Stuart Lancaster's men, which leaves us with a table of the top 9 as follows. Glasgow in first on 60 points. Stormers 59, Leinster 58, Bulls 54, Lions 53, Munster 51, Cardiff 50, Ulster 50, Connacht 49. So, Rudd, lots to play for. Exciting coming into the final round.
From the outset, what you want is jeopardy, and you want to think teams having stuff to play for coming into the final game. And I know not every game has, or not every team has something to play for, but if you've got 9 teams going for 8 spots with Champions Cup and URC playoff places on the line, it's pretty good. I mean, I would argue that an 18 playoffs is probably unwieldy and ends up with probably, fairly top heavy knockout games at times. But in terms of the European qualification and for the last couple of weeks, this has been building and building and building, and every weekend there's been a bit of a swing. So it's good, and it's there's a real chance of all 4 Irish provinces getting in, which would be a really impressive result. There's obviously a chance one of them's not going to make it. One of 3 Leinster are already there, but the other 3 are all still battling it out. So it's shaping up nicely.
Yeah, so the fixtures for this coming weekend, we'll discuss about last weekend and next weekend on tonight's show. Friday night, kind of pretty interesting. We have Ulster hosting Glasgow, we have Cardiff hosting the Stormers, and we've Connacht making the trip to Edinburgh. And then the 2 key games to look out for then on the Saturday is Leinster hosting the Ospreys at 5:15, I think, and then 7:45 Munster Lions. That's the last game of the regular season. So Munster at least will have an idea of what they need to do to improve their seeding or potentially just to actually remain in the top 8 come that point. But going back to last weekend, Luke, let's go to Connacht Munster. Connacht 26, Munster 7. When the teams were announced on Friday and there was no Crowley, there was no Tyke Byrne amongst a few other players like Tom Farrell, Michael Milne, John Klein was out as well. It looked like it was an advantage Connacht, and so it proved. 19-0 up at half time. They were never really threatened by Munster. They played really, really well, scored some lovely tries. Also defended very well, which has been a kind of a hallmark of their improvement in the back half of the season. Just really impressive on both sides of the ball, and then kind of another tick in the Stuart Lancaster, I suppose, rejuvenation of Connacht over the course of the season.
Yeah, I thought they were really great. I think, look, it was one of those matches where it was a combination of them being, very good. Great might be, a bit possibly a little over generous. I think Munster were poor. They didn't show much ambition. And it was a bit worrying. I won't lie. I was worried watching Munster. They looked flat, like for such a huge game, looked very, very flat. And it just shows, they just don't have that depth, do they? They really miss that leadership group, that core leadership group. And they're a very different team without it. And, with all the stuff going on off the pitch as well, it's kind of worrying enough times for them. I think, as you say, they probably have an advantage in that they're at home and that they kind of know what they have to do. And you think they'll come out with, serious kind of, energy and fury. There'll be a fury about them, you'd imagine, as they're trying to secure a kind of a qualification place. So they do have an advantage there, but the Lions are pretty good. I know we got to Leinster Lions later on, but I thought they were pretty decent, and I think they'll pose them some problems, particularly if they don't get some key guys back for that. So that's maybe the Munster angle on the Connacht flavour. Yeah, look, it was brilliant to hear. I like Lancaster's such a good coach. Like you've heard me talking about it like the last couple of years about Connacht. I'd say most people who are observing them as well week to week. Key thing was getting that kind of average score, per match down that they're conceding. That was their defense has been the real problem for them. It's never really been the other side of the ball, even though they could have been better at times over the last couple of years, but. when they have the full complement, they've always been pretty good going forward. I still think he's taken them on a leap there as well. I think the ball handling ability has been outstanding. You see them in the outside channels. Kind of remind me of Leinster when Lancaster were there. So crisp in the outside channels, really like very, very accurate. Rooking was really good. Lines of running were good. Really, really impressive. But it's the defense, and you heard Lancaster talking after the match about that. Like, that's been the key change for them, is being able to keep teams. Obviously, in this case, they kept them to a very low score. But just more generally speaking, you'll win more matches if you can keep teams to kind of manageable enough scores against your score lines against you. It's a good recipe to start off with being just a bit stingy, be difficult to beat. I feel like I'm the most boring person ever watching rugby, but it's where I start thinking about a team being good, is if they're stingy on that side of the ball. To me, it kind of tells you a lot more about a team than just their technique or how they think about defense. It tells me how close knit you are and how up for the fight you are physically. Because if you're good at those two things, and you've got a decent, you don't even have to have the best system in the world. If you just have a big heart, good togetherness, and a reasonable kind of plan about how the other team are going to attack you, and you can deliver on all the kind of on the plan that you're trying to implement. To me, it tells a lot about a team. It tells me you're going to be, you're a good team, and I think most of those teams can generally be pretty good on the other side of the ball, and they don't have to be that great to be very, very successful. So, I was really pleased with them. I think there'll be a handful if they can make it in. I look, Edinburgh will be dangerous, no doubt about that, and they've got to go away, all that kind of stuff. But I would not like to be playing Connacht at this stage of the season. I think they look really strong. I think they look like they understand how they want to play. I think they've got a lot of players who are actually in form, like a lot of guys who are actually playing good rugby. I thought Prendergast was outstanding. I thought the two scrum halves were very good throughout the game. I just thought Bundy looked good. He looked sharp when he had his kind of few involvements. And the pack are kind of humming. I was really impressed with them guys. So I've gone on a bit. I'm conscious I want to give Rhodes a go, but I just that was kind of my impression of Connacht and just how impressed it was. And then obviously the other side were Munster were very worrying.
Yeah, on the defensive side, Rudd, I've mentioned this game a lot, but like when they conceded 48 points to the Dragons on just like the Saturday before Christmas, it was kind of alarm bells. You're like, Jesus, the Lancaster project really isn't going as people envisaged. And then like the leap they've taken since then has been very impressive. Like Luke mentioned a couple of names there, but like every line of the team, like Billy Bohan, Sam Illo, so powerful at prop. Like Darren Murray got through a lot of work. Their back row of Prendergast, Hurley Langton and Jansen was really powerful again. Thought Ben Murphy was very exciting. Harry West at 13, when the teams were names, I was intrigued. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. He had really mazy run when he just looked so threatening, and it showed me a side of him I hadn't seen before. What did you make of them? I was just very, very impressed. And obviously Edinburgh away is a tricky fixture. I know it's a dead rubber for Edinburgh, but they've won 3 in a row in the league quietly, and we saw they caused Leinster a few problems, albeit with a couple of intercepts. But from a Connacht perspective, what's your kind of verdict on how much they've improved?
It's night and day from the day they opened the new stand. They've just gone to another level. Even I know they didn't get the result against Leinster that night, but they were really competitive in that fixture, and it's just a pity that they couldn't get it open earlier and they couldn't get on this run before it opened, because it's left them chasing, and it's left them, like, even if they win with 5 points on Friday night, there's a chance it won't be enough for them at the weekend. And I think the playoffs almost deserve this Connacht team. I think they will be a really dangerous 6th or 7th seed going away to any of the top 4. I don't think anyone will fancy drawing them. I think teams would much prefer Munster be in there than Connacht, the way they're playing at the moment. They're absolutely coming like a train into these knockouts. I think they might regret, or Lancaster may ultimately regret, his selection policy in South Africa, and in particular not bringing Bundy Aki at all, considering he didn't play a part in the Six Nations really, and I know he's 36 and there's a lot of management stuff at play, and maybe there's an injury we don't know about, but not bringing him down there, not unleashing him in one of those 2 games.
They got nothing from the Lions game.
That's the thing.
Remember, we were talking about bonus point management in South Africa. Like to even leave there with 1 point would put them in a much stronger position.
And they're good enough to go to the Lions and at least pick up 1 or 2 points. We've seen that, but he made massive changes from the Stormers to the Lions, and they're not fighting on 2 fronts anymore. So look, he's used his squad very well this year. He's given everyone an opportunity. I think we've seen him be able to bring what he had in Leinster, where no matter who's on the pitch, they all hit a certain level. They all understand the game plan. He's able to mix and match, and the standards don't drop, which you couldn't say of Munster. You couldn't really say of Leinster a lot of this season, although it's getting better with Leinster. and he's unearthed a few really, really real gems of players. And I thought you were right to highlight Harry West. I thought he's a really exciting prospect. Like that break you're talking about was almost Christian Cullen-esque the way
It was. Well, he was weaving between tacklers and like defenders were their heads were spinning like the Exorcist. It was brilliant.
And he's in his first season as a pro, and he's able to start games at 14, 15 and 13. That's a really good prospect to have in your hands. I think Nocton's been very good. He's got Jack Carty playing really well, and he's got Jack Carty completely bought into what he's doing, and he's singing his praises. And it's just, I hope they don't run out of games. I hope Connacht get to this knockouts, because I think they could do some damage, and I think their players have real. Like, I think Andy Farrell's going to be looking at a fair few of their players for the summer, and he'd like to have them on board for the summer tour, where I think there's very few of those Munster players are going to be going to Australia and New Zealand this summer, because the form line there is really bad. And I don't want to get into Munster before giving Connacht their due credit, but it's very hard not to bring Munster into this, because, as Luke said, Connacht weren't great. They didn't need to be great. They didn't need to be. They just needed to turn up and play well, and they were so much better than Munster on the night.
When I saw the team sheet and there was no Crowley and Byrne, I was like, Connacht are winning this game. I'm probably with a bonus point. That's where I'm at with Munster when I look at that. When I assess Munster compared to, put Leinster to the side, because they're obviously competing on a different level to the other three teams. But I think, like, if you're drafting players from the other three provinces, like Crowley, Byrne, and Casey go off the board very, very quickly. But then the next Munster player being picked is probably a good bit down. Like, I actually think Connacht and Ulster probably have much deeper first 15s, I think. And when I'm looking at Munster now, I know they are missing a couple of other players, to be fair, but God, the performance they turned in on Saturday was not good enough.
No, and when you look at the Munster players and you think about them, say, a couple of years ago when they were Ireland under-20s, like, some of those players were the stars of their Ireland under-20 teams, and they were much higher profile players coming through than the Connacht equivalents who are outplaying them now. And the question for Munster is that what's happening to these players between the age of 20, when they look like real prospects, to when they get into the first team. And I'm thinking of Tom Ahern, who I think his form has dropped off a cliff. I'm looking at Brian Gleeson, who had his injuries this year, but like really should be the coming force for Munster, but it isn't having. He was okay off the bench, in fairness to him. He came on and made an impact. But there's a real drop off. Munster are not getting enough out of players that on paper are very, very good players. And I think if the worry for McMillan, and I don't know, there's obviously a lot of people are worried that he's going to walk, or that as a result of the Randall thing, his time at Munster might come to an end this year. But you certainly couldn't say that, even though he's accumulated more points than Stuart Lancaster over the course of the first season, you couldn't say that he's had the results, the coaching results that Lancaster has had, with what is probably a lesser a squad of players. And Lancaster has you can see with your own eyes, the eye test, Connacht have made incremental improvements across, certainly since Christmas. They look like a more cohesive unit. They look more together in terms of their spirit. He's fixed their defence. He's gone after the things that he targeted at the start of the season, and you could see the improvements there. Whereas McMillan got this unbelievable start, and he's really just hanging on to that start. Those points that he got at the start of the season are what's kind of keeping them in the playoffs at the moment. But he talked about raising the team's, he knew Munster had a high ceiling, but they had to get their floor to a much higher level and be consistent across the season. That hasn't happened. And their attack's gone backwards. Their defence looks really disorganised. Their set piece is still a major issue. Discipline wasn't great on Saturday. Not just a fairly controversial red card, but like they were shipping penalties from early on. I don't think they look like they're in a good place at all in terms of being a team, because there are still good players on that pitch. Yes, they're missing their Ireland internationals, but there are still good players on that pitch from a Munster point of view, and they're not the sum of their parts. And that's alarming, because Luke's right. The Lions are a good team, and they could easily turn up in Thomond with the same level of physicality and spirit that they showed at the Aviva Stadium last Saturday, and they could turn Munster over.
Yeah, the Lions, like, that wasn't a 31-7 game, that Lions-Leinster game. Like, Leinster are a better team and deserved to win, but I thought the Lions were decent. Like, the record outside of South Africa this year is actually quite poor. Like, so to go to Thomond and win would be a big ask. Like, but I take your point. They are a dangerous team. Luke, just before some Munster thoughts, what did you make of that red card incident, actually? Because I know, just listening to the commentary team were certainly thought it was very harsh. I don't know what you made of it.
Wasn't a red for me. No, I just thought it was just bad luck. You could see, like, they were kind of twisting around. There was kind of an awkward fall. I didn't think it was at all a red. Honestly, I thought that was a rugby incident. personally. And look, and I've been fairly strong on lots of these incidents the last couple of years, and I'm definitely pro. Like I could see the danger to the game from kind of the concussion element, and how I'm not one of these kind of thinking we need to be tougher in rugby, but that to me was wrong. That's like, you have to understand. There's a problem with some of the referees. They just don't understand. I don't think if you've played, maybe if you haven't played it, but if you haven't played to a decent level or whatever, you just don't understand sometimes, how a collision unfolds and what people should be doing. Like, and it's not always about intent. Sometimes you're heading in with a bad position. To me, that was not a red card, honestly. But that's, and I know we're trying to keep the game safe, but that just, to me, no, not for me. Didn't like it. Thought it was a bad decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think the spirit of why they're trying to clamp down on that roll and putting your full body weight onto the opposition player after the roll, which we saw on Friday night with the Ian Henderson red card. I agree with that being stamped out of the game, and look, no one wants to see another Dan Levy incident ever again. But the breakdown is messy, and there are times where players will just fall in awkward positions. And I think the Barron situation is very different to the Ian Henderson situation.
Very different. I'm so glad you said that, Rhodes. I wish I'd made the comparison myself.
Yeah, but I think McMillan said that the referee was influenced by what he'd seen over the weekend. But I have to say, I thought they saw something that wasn't there, and it was an unfortunate incident. And I thought Barron was very unfortunate to. Like, I hope Tierney Martin's okay, and that it's not a long-term injury, that his season isn't over. But I don't think Barron, I don't think his action was the kind of action that it merits a red card.
Started as a tackle,
yeah,
which is very different to a crock roll clear out.
And if you think about it, like, if you see where, like, Henderson won, it's not that you get punished, right, for not your technique not being perfect, but Henderson comes into that and he misses the collision, and he's at fault, and he makes the decision to do it. Now, not always that you have to make the decision to do it, but that doesn't help him, in my opinion, because you can see he's lost the shoulder at the contact area. He slips over the top of him, and then he goes for the crock roll. To me, he needs to try and readjust and win the collision. Like, you don't want people in that position, like, doing the kind of the crock roll, if you like. I know he's not trying to hurt him. I know exactly what we used to call the tin opener, where you kind of put the body weight down the guy and you roll him out. And it's obviously just, I just think because he's missed the shoulder, I have no sympathy with Henderson, even though obviously, on the wider scale, I know it's not a malicious thing, but it's an awkward collision. And he gets no sympathy for me in the respect of I think that one is a red to me. But I think we're talking about two completely different types of instances. I think we're talking about two completely, how the incident unfolds is completely different. Barron's not even looking at him, in my opinion, at the point where he's about to kind of make it's kind of like an awkward area that they end up in because it's been twisted around. So to me, they're completely different.
I thought the Munster reaction to the red card, and the fact that John Hodnett threw into the first line out and Jeremy Loughman threw into the next one spoke
Weird.
of just a lack of planning, a lack of foresight, a lack of detail, that at this stage of the season you don't have a plan, you don't have an identified hierarchy of who's going to do that you haven't scenario plan for that. That worried me. Like, it's a small detail, but they don't look like it. Maybe it's because there's so much going on, but at this stage of the season, that's the kind of stuff that you have to have nailed down. They had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and yet their hooker got sin bin, or yellow carded, and that's going to happen. It happens regularly enough. How often do the hookers get? It happens. You got to have a plan for that, and I just thought that spoke to. Maybe it's harsh, but I thought that was just looked very disorganised and worrying in terms of their preparation.
Not sure if it was planned when Bundy was throwing into the lineup against Montpellier a few weeks ago for Connacht, but yeah, he did a half decent job.
Well, I think it would have been planned. I go down to Ireland training sometimes.
This time of the year, that's the one thing. So these are kind of crucial matches now. So I feel like you're probably allowed one or two of these instances maybe a little bit earlier, Will. But this is real crunch time now. It's like the Gary Ringrose thing with Leinster. To me, it's kind of this is the time of year where it's kind of unforgiving. And like, maybe getting line out back there might have settled things down. They could have mauled it. They could have got a penalty. It could have just, calmed them down a little bit. They're kind of big. They don't seem like big things, but to me, everything's big now.
Yeah,
everything is this time of the year is the crunch time. This is where you have to have had, as much of the thinking like that. It's not like a black swan event where you just cannot predict. Oh, like the hooker going off the pitch, and we don't and the next phase isn't a or the next time we have to have a hooker is a scrum. Like it could very well be a line out. To me, it's not an complete. You don't have to have out of the box thinking to figure this out and say, well, maybe we have to have some kind of plan in place. Now maybe they did, but it's not a good look, as you say, when you switch over after one bad. Like, and it wasn't even that bad a throw. I don't know. Yeah, I just think it's important to say that. Sorry, Rhodes, you were in the middle there.
No, you're grand. Like it's I get into Ireland training, at the start, and they've got 3 or 4. Often the scrum halves are practicing their throwing. We saw the day in Murrayfield where both hookers got injured and Cian Healy went into hooker and Josh van der Veer threw. Like they had a clear plan. They knew what they were doing, and they don't have as much time to prepare as Munster do. So it's a small thing, but it just speaks to like what's the focus like at Munster at the moment with everything that's going on off the pitch. McMillan's firefighting. He's trying to find a new attack coach on the back of and a new forwards coach. We don't know if he's staying next year. He was quite ambiguous about that before the game. There's a review into the handling of the McMillan affair. The Randall affair and the kind of governance around the club. There's redundancies are happening. Like there's just so much going on. There's huge pressure on them, and it's a small. Maybe it's unfair to pick it out, but it struck me as something that I thought should have been nailed down before the game.
Do you think Clayton McMillan will be the coach next year?
I don't know. I asked him directly. That was my question on Thursday. Yeah, and it was, and he gave a very nuanced and confusing answer.
Interesting quotes, like very, very interesting quotes.
Yeah. Well, at first he sounded like I'll be here if they want me, but then he wanted some guarantees around some stuff, and then I kind of went, okay, I'm a little bit confused by what you've said. And he said, look, I've never walked away from a fight and I'm not going to. So that suggests to me that he wants to stay. Look, the RFU want him to stay. Munster, what's left of the hierarchy, want them to stay. But, the CEO and the general manager are under huge pressure for their own positions at the moment. I don't know what his, he wasn't getting into specifics about what his own demands are in terms of personnel. They wanted Jason Holland, the former centre and former All Blacks coach, as their senior coach or attack coach. He couldn't do it. He didn't want to move from the Hurricanes, so they went to Randall. They obviously had him signed up. Now it's very late in the day, so they've only signed one new player for next season. Officially, anyway, we know there's a couple of people coming now from Jack Angers coming from Connacht, but beyond that, they have the South African hooker come from the Scarlets, but there's no major overseas signings. It's very late in the day for all this to be happening, and you're trying to fight on, trying to keep your URC hopes alive, which will impact your budgets and stuff as well. I'd say probably yes to answer your initial question, but I don't say that with any certainty, and I think there's a bit of soul searching and stuff to be done between now and probably it's all hands on deck for the URC for these 2 weeks, and then there'll be another week, whether they have a playoff or not. The week of the Champions Cup final, they'll be back to kind of the off-field stuff and trying to sort all that stuff out.
Well, if they win, if they beat the Lions, the most likely outcome is a trip to Loftus Versfeld to play the Bulls. Just looking at the fixtures, because the Bulls are home to Benetton, you'd expect them to take care of business there, so that'd be a daunting trip. And if they lose, and Cardiff, Ulster, and Connacht all win, they're out of the Champions Cup next season. Now that does seem unlikely that would all come to fruition, but going into the final round of the Champions Cup, when they were playing Cass, it didn't look likely that they would be eliminated, and they ended up being turfed out, so they'll need to take care of business this weekend. Last thing on Connacht, Luke, it's funny, obviously, like Connacht playing for their place in the playoffs, and you, as you say, very dangerous team. But part of me just wants to fast forward to the start of next season to see what they look like with Lancaster with another pre-season under their belt and how they finish this season, because they're really starting to the green shoots are when we first would have discussed him coming in and what the best case scenario would look like. You're starting to see those little kind of inklings there, and I'm very excited to see this project a little further down the line as well.
Yeah, and I think someone like the likes of Frawley coming down will make a serious impact there, I think.
We'll get to him in a few minutes.
We will get to him in a few minutes, but there's a few, to me, they're exciting. You can see what he's done with the young talent there as well. I think he's really brought a few people on, which is what we had kind of hoped when they made this appointment, was that, would he be able to kind of produce the magic? Well, I don't even say magic. I think it's a fairly well-worn path with him. I think he's been very, very good with youth all the way through. I think Leinster probably still are seeing the benefits of this we're coming to the end of this current crop, but a lot of this crop, at a kind of key point in their career, Lancaster was their rugby coach, and I think all the skills, all the knowledge, all that kind of stuff, even you think of Farrell was at a key point in his career when he would have been working with Lancaster. from everything I hear about the guy, he seems to bring on people, bring up the kind of like a bit of a rising tide. Everything seems to kind of come with them, coaches and players alike. And we're kind of, I think we're seeing a little bit of that. You see the likes of, Illo, I think Murray will benefit from it. He's excellent to lose. Prendergast looks like he's playing great rugby. I think, the back line, we've seen some real young, good talent alongside some established guys, but I'm really, really excited to see what Frawley can do down there. And I'd love to see him at 10. And I do wonder if we'll see a few of these guys coming into the Irish kind of scene over the next year or two. I think there's a few guys who are really on the cusp of kind of breaking through. Now, can they break Leinster's kind of stranglehold and outside of kind of Munster's kind of key guys? Can they break in there? My sense is they actually can. I really like the look of what he's doing. Really impressed with him. And yeah, like next season, I agree. I only kind of see them getting better, even though I don't see bar Frawley like massive depth coming into this squad, which has probably been the main issue. But from the resources he has, he's made a serious team. So more time with him, I think, seems to be a good thing in my opinion.
I wouldn't wish away this year just yet, Will. I'm pretty sure I think I tipped them as dark horses for the URC on our first pod of the year. Maybe I'm misremembering. And I definitely didn't have any faith in them around December time. But I really think, like we've seen with Ulster, with Munster and Glasgow in recent years, if you hit form at this time of the year, this tournament's there to be won. Now it's more difficult now that the URC finals are after the Champions Cup final, so Leinster can go fully, concentrate fully on it. They're not going to be resting people in semi-finals and quarterfinals necessarily, but still, I just think they're a really dangerous team for anyone. And the one player I think who definitely has Ireland upside in the here and now is Sean Jansen. I think he needs to go on that summer tour. Him and Hurley Langton, who's not Irish qualified until next year, they're both such physical players and they give them so much. And that combination with Prendergast is very, very impressive.
Yeah, Lancaster's had such an interesting career in the sense that, like, I feel like in Ireland, like, if they were doing a French podcast, they wouldn't be talking about him the way we talk about him. An English podcast, similarly, although they would respect what he's done at Leinster, but obviously he was their national coach at the Home World Cup and it went so badly. But whereas in Ireland, he's like feted and celebrated as a kind of a guru or a very good coach. It's just kind of funny how that works, isn't it? Like different countries have different opinions of him.
Yeah, but I wondered whether Connacht was going to be a good fit for him, because like with Leinster, he was dealing with the cream of the crop from such a good school system, players who'd been in basically mini academies the whole way up. They were highly educated, highly rugby educated. They fit the system straight away when they came in. And he talked about it in Connacht that with the young players that he was dealing with, they were having to catch up on where the Leinster players of the same age will be much further down the track. And I think it's really impressive that he's pulled it together so quickly in his first year at a time where, like, he inherited, like, Rod Save, the attack coach, who was brought in on a for a couple of years. He's already leaving at the end of this season, so it hasn't all been plain sailing behind the scenes. There's obviously there hasn't, he's having a bit of a challenge behind the scenes in terms of the load that he's put on the coaches, the load that he's put on the players who haven't been used to this level of expectation and detail, the level of training, the Tuesdays, all that sort of stuff, and yet they've bought into it. It seems like they did their contracting stuff much earlier in terms of players leaving, so the players that are leaving got over their disappointment earlier in the season and are now fully bought into finishing on a high, whereas in other provinces it does seem like the contracts are being done later, so their players are probably a little bit more uncertain, a little bit more pissed off about the way things have gone, and that's probably taken away from the unity. I'm thinking of Munster, the unity of the group, whereas Connacht seem to have just brought everything together at the right time, and they've got incredible momentum. They just need to go to Edinburgh and finish the job.
Yeah, so Edinburgh Friday night. I don't know, hard to know what Edinburgh mindset will be like. Their season is over, albeit they want to finish out with a win in front of their home fans probably, but Connacht definitely have so much more to play for. You'd like to think they could maybe get over the line there. And then for Munster, as I said, they're the last game, 7:45 Saturday night. No Tadhg Byrne, he's already been ruled out, which is a huge blow. Jack Crowley is expected to be back, who they will badly need. But yeah, that Lions game could be a tricky one. So yeah, that'll be an exciting one to close out the regular season. We'll be back in just a minute. We'll discuss Leinster and the rest of the talking points. So Leinster 31, Lions 7, a bonus point win for Leo Cullen's side. It was 14-7 up to about 10 minutes to go when tries from Hugo Keenan, Rico Ioane and Jimmy O'Brien finished out the job. So it was a very impressive victory in the end because Leinster rotated a fair degree, gave a few guys the week off. Luke, what was your verdict on that performance?
Well, the key guys really were were the key guys off the bench, wasn't it? I thought that the team looked better with Frawley at 10. I thought like Dan Sheehan, like I don't even. Is there any point in even talking about how good he is? Like he was so good off the bench. Um, I thought. Yeah, look, at that part, like, look, the Lions are pretty good. Like I think Leinster got away with one or two bits earlier in the game. It could have been a hairier finish. I think some of the defense was just, little messy at times. Although similar enough to the Toulon game, they were able to kind of push the Lions similar to what they did with Toulon. They were able to get on top of them for the majority of it, but they were kind of had obviously the try that was chalked off was fairly contentious. I kind of agree with it in the end. I think it was the right decision, but I mean some of the tackling afterwards was pretty embarrassing. Yeah, I think they still have a little bit of that in them. I think look, once the frontliners are on the pitch, it's very much a different task playing Leinster. I still think they've got serious quality and depth. And that's probably the most obvious thing that when I think about the game, that was the most obvious thing. I thought there was some good stuff. I thought James Ryan was pretty good for the most part. I thought Clarkson was good. Really liked. I thought McGrath had a really good game. I thought his kicking was really, really good. I don't know if you guys noticed that. It's something that maybe that's going to be important because I think like Gibson Park has been key for Leinster the last couple of weeks, but there's a lot of risk in having him there. Like if he picks up an injury, he like the scrum half there is shouldering a lot of the kicking burden, and McGrath, it's the best I've seen him kick. I thought he was brilliant. I thought Osborne with Jamie was very good. I thought Ioana was pretty good for the most part. So yeah, they're the kind of highlights and the individuals that I thought were pretty good. Scrum was a little bit of a worry, but I don't know if they're the frontline guys that are going to be there really when it comes to the bigger matches down the track, but some of them might be. And that was a little bit concerning. I thought the Lions looked the Lions are very strong there, but I don't know if you guys, that was a little bit worrying, that part of the game maybe. Yeah, they're my kind of thoughts on it.
I want to ask you about scrum half, Luke, or sorry, Rudd. Like Luke McGrath's going to Perpignan at the end of the season. Gibson Park, obviously, Ireland frontliner, doesn't play a whole number of URC regular season games, and he's also 34. He'll be 35 next year. Yeah. Obviously, going to the World Cup, and then after that, he'll be getting on in his career. It kind of strikes me. There's no obvious. I know Fintan Gunn plays a lot. He hasn't really grasped the kind of that position though. Really, like I know Cormac Foley was who was impressed on occasion with Leinster. It was along with the Ospreys for a stint this year. So it's kind of a bit in flux. Like it's one area in particular where Leinster don't seem to have huge depth, and I'll be interested to see how it shakes out over the next say year or two in terms of if they might bring somebody in or how that might go.
Yeah, and it's not a position. I think it's a position that probably Leinster, when they kind of audit their academy, they probably would feel like they haven't brought enough through in that one position. They've brought it, they've brought through great players and pretty much across the board. But scrum half, Luke McGrath's the last academy product certainly within Leinster, who's kind of made a real impact. Gunn, there's aspects of Gunn's game I like, but I don't think we've seen enough of him. And he's still reasonably young. He's 22, 23 now. He was the same age group as Sam Prendergast and Diarmuid Mangan. But it'll be a big step up for him next year if he's going to go into that Luke McGrath role. And I know McGrath didn't get off the bench in that semi-final, but he's been exceptional the last couple of weeks. Up in Ulster, he was brilliant. And one thing Luke McGrath gives you, and like Luke played with him, he'll know this, like he is one of the best defenders and the most committed players around. He's such a valuable player from Leinster's point of view. His pass is probably what let him down in terms of getting more caps. Like he was really good at the 2019 World Cup. He's never got a look in under Andy Farrell. But from a Leinster point of view, he's been a really, really like quality operator for a long time, and he's entitled to go and get a little stint in Perpignan, and hopefully it goes really well for him. But I'm almost surprised Leinster didn't do more to try and hang on to him, because I think in those weeks when the internationals are away, he's a really important leader for them. I think he sets good standards around the place, and that defensive tone that he sets is very important. He'll be missed when he's gone.
He's actually a year younger than Gibson Park as well, which is funny. Like it's like, the veteran Luke McGrath, but it's like he's actually younger than the starter. Like I know because Gibson Park obviously came over later in his career.
He's the kind of guy you love playing with. He's the kind of guy you're like, and that's the thing where you find it hard for, when you look at like say like Prendergast, like I know I hate to keep harping on, but that attempt to tackle was So embarrassing for that disallowed try. And when you see how small, like he's not completely tiny, but Luke McGrath, like you see how kind of diminutive he is and how he puts himself about, and that's how you play rugby. Like that is how you, there's to me, it's like to watching that guy, how you could back off yourself from that kind of from a tackle, and then you look at how Luke McGrath throws himself into things. He is the exact kind of person you want to play. He's the kind of guy you want to pick. You want to pick Luke McGrath. Like you're finding reasons to, and I always thought, yeah, you probably didn't get the same zip in the past, but everything else, he's a winner. He plays like a winner. He plays like a guy who wants to, who's competing at every single facet of the game. You want to go to war with someone like him. He can give a team a lift by like if you're in the middle of a big defensive set and you see him making a hit on a big guy, you're kind of going, well, geez, I better step up here as well if he can do that. So yeah, I think you're right, Rose. I wouldn't underplay. Like that's a loss to the squad. He's a good personality. He's a really hard trainer, and yeah, not perfect on the skills front. But bloody hell, like he's one of the first guys I'd go to war with. Kind of like kind of remind me that like he's the same mentality as Ferg McFadden, just a winner. He's the kind of guy you're kind of going, like, it doesn't look like, Christian Cullen kind of mazy runs. Sorry, that's the first name that comes out or something. It doesn't look like so easy, but wow, do you love playing with them? They're just brilliant players. So a big loss, big mentality. They'll miss him. They will miss him. Glad you said that, Ruds.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that scrum half situation shakes out. I could see Ben Murphy in a couple of years' time, like Leinster making a play for him. I know he's from Leinster, obviously. Like he he didn't go to the Leinster Academy or anything like that, and his father obviously is coaching Ulster. But I think Ben Murphy has huge potential, and I could see it in a period where Gibson Park maybe is transitioning out of the team or is moving on. I could see them going for Ben Murphy and him slotting in really well. I think he has massive potential.
Well, they tried to sign Craig Casey a couple of years ago, and I'm surprised they weren't in for Matty Devine, who's gone to Ulster. I know Munster, I think we're interested in him as well. He's only on a 1-year deal, so he'll be up again next year, and there's no guarantee he goes back to Connacht because that seemed to end quite badly, even though he's now getting the games that he probably are the reason he left.
Nathan Doak will be there as well. It's not as if like
but he's a good bench option.
Brilliant on the weekends.
Dokes is becoming a really serious operator now. But it's definitely it's a. I mean,
if you want game time, Leinster is the province to go to. I would argue because Gibson Park won't be there very often, and you'd probably end up starting 15 URC game.
I quite like Gunn. I quite like Gunn, guys. He looks zippy. I think the key point that Rud's made earlier on when he was talking about him, I think, was that we just haven't seen enough of him. The bit I've seen of him, I quite like. I think he could work well. I'd probably like to see. I think the way we're probably going to expect something like a Gibson Park and how he plays, but I think he's probably a bit of an exceptional, isn't he? Like just in terms of how, like particularly when the game, breaks up, how he sees the game. It seems to slow down for him when it's going quicker for everyone else. It's a bit of a rare skill, I think. He kind of has that Dupont feel about him. Do you know why Dupont they just both look so relaxed and so quick, and they seem to, it's quite rare they make the wrong decision when the game is really, really quick. So
you kind of developed that though over time. Like when he first got to Leinster,
you absolutely can. I think they're both brilliant athletes though. That really helps them. And I think Gunn he looks really fit, but he's still a smaller guy. So we'll wait and see on that one. I think it's worth giving him a shot. Put it that way. But he like there'll be a lot of rugby. I think it's an interesting area, Leinster, like where it looks like Leinster are a little weak to me. And they need someone to come through pretty quick, particularly with Luke going.
I agree with you, Rod. I'm surprised they didn't make a play for like someone like a Devine, because I do think there's an opportunity for a scrum half there to go in and get a lot of game time and look potentially very good. I think Ben Murphy has a lot of potential, but obviously he's with Connacht for the foreseeable, but someone I really like. Let's discuss the Prendergast Frawley, kind of how that went at the weekend. And I know you wrote in your newsletter today about Sam Prendergast and specifically saying that there's an Ireland tour to come in the summer, Ireland, New Zealand and Eden Park, which is going to be great in a couple of months' time. And you think Sam Prendergast shouldn't be picked on that tour and should kind of take the summer to, I don't know, work on his defence, bulk up, just basically have a reset, because it's been a very, very difficult season. And sorry, also on form, he shouldn't be there, I don't think either. I don't think he's one of the 3 best out halves in the country, but obviously Andy Farrell does like him a lot. But again, every game now, it's not only like a defensive mistake, but it's kind of like these big ones that are kind of almost viral clips being sent around, like which isn't good for his confidence, but also not good for the team. And you wonder, can they keep picking him with the huge game to come in 2 weeks' time on the basis of that?
Well, as it stands, I don't see him being the 23 for the Champions Cup final against Bordeaux. And if you're not getting into the Leinster Champions Cup 23 for the biggest game of the season, I don't see how you go on the Ireland tour ahead of the two players who were picked ahead of you, plus Jack Crowley, who's the incumbent. So unless he takes 4, I think it's going to be very difficult for Sam Prendergast to go on that tour. And look, Des Ryan, the kind of, I think he's the head of S&C and NUIG now, but he was the head of S&C for Arsenal's academy for years.
Joe talked to him on the podcast.
Yeah, Joe talked. Yeah, he but he'd have a big reputation as and would be quite well respected. He's recommended that Sam Prendergast basically needs a pre-season and needs a specific development plan just to get bigger and stronger, so that he's able to have more confidence in those collisions. There's and look, if that's the issue, then they have to fix it, because at the moment he's not, Luke's one of the first to kind of publicly kind of call this out over and over again, but it's just so glaringly obvious now in these big games. Like, it nearly cost them the place in the final with the Drayan incident, and had Ioane not made it back and Joe McCarthy not made it back subsequently, that Leinster might not have a final to look forward to now. So they has to fix it, and it's going to take some. Maybe it's just the dropping itself to fix his kind of mental approach to it, or maybe it's technical, maybe it's about size. I'm not sure, but it's glaring, and it needs to be front and centre. And like Frawley, when it came to the all-round out-half play, Frawley looked sharper as well. His goal kicking wasn't great, but apart from that, like he looked more comfortable.
Looked good. He did look
good.
Really
good, and the team looked better when he was in that number 10 jersey. And at the moment with Ireland, the team looked better when Jack Crowley went into that number 10 jersey. They gained more confidence from having him there, and I think Leinster look better when it's Harry Byrne or Frawley pulling the strings right now. And look, Prendergast is too talented to write off, but he's got a major glaring issue in his game that needs to fix. And I'm not sure the other parts of his game are going to come with him until he's fixed that glaring part of his game. And then he's getting involved. Like, it's becoming a big thing where opposite opponents are obviously targeting him physically, but they're also going after him off the ball, trying to ruffle his feathers. And then he's gone down very easily and getting given out to by Holly Davidson.
I was embarrassed.
Deservedly so.
That's a low point.
And that's only just exacerbating this whole situation. And it's just like, you just kind of feel like he needs to be taken out of the firing line for a while. But Leinster have big games coming up, and he's still part of the squad. And Leo Cullen seems intent on keeping him involved. I asked him about it on Friday, and I asked him, did you not have any temptation to start Frawley, because he's got, you're probably going to need him in the final. And he said, look, we believe Sam is a massive part of Leinster's future, and we wanted to give him the game time. We think he deserves it. So he's massively part of their plans.
Luke, what do you think?
I'm toying between speaking exactly what I think and completely decimating someone, or trying to be a bit more measured. I sent you a still image when we were watching the match. Well, like, that tells you everything. There's no weights are going to fix that. No weights are going to fix you putting your arms together like that when you're about to tackle someone. I don't know, like, for the disallowed try. I don't know, guys. I think I'm like, yeah.
Is it feasible? Torn. Is it feasible for him to go away in the summer and work with? No, I'm sure.
I look back at that incident. I was like, that's a weird how that collision happened, and I was like, I slowed that down to the point of contact, and he's got his arms together, like he's like, and looking away. I was like, this is rugby. Like, you have to enjoy contact, otherwise you're never going to be the person, I don't think, to bring Leinster back to the top table, to the top of the European game, and it's disappointing. Like, I'm just getting more and more worried about it. Like, I would have thought that, you wouldn't be having these instances when people start calling you out. But I made the point about Luke McGrath. Like, Luke McGrath is 5'7" or 8 or something. He's not a big guy, but look how he puts himself about. He wants it. If you want to be a winner, you've got to put yourself on the line, guys. I just think there's no place for it in rugby. You cannot hide. You can't hide someone like that. They'll just always let you down. And I hope I'm wrong. I honestly, I swear to God, I hope I'm wrong. I've taken zero pleasure out of any of this. Like, a young guy coming through, but I just really think it's a really bad trait, and I really didn't like it when I saw it initially, and I was kind of reserved. But now, every time I see it, I made a commitment during the year that every time I saw something like I saw on the weekend, I'm calling it out for what it is. I have my reservations about fixing it. I don't think. I'm not sure. I know Des a little bit, but I don't know if he's ever played at a very high level. Maybe he has, but I have played at a high level, and I think I've kind of seen these guys come and go, and I just don't. I think they're really hard. Waits doesn't fix that. You know, Waits doesn't. There's some things Waits can't fix, and there's some that can't. You got to want it. You got to want to be a winner. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm very worried about him. I'm very worried. I thought the kind of stick would change things, but no, I thought look. It looks to me like it's a massive mistake. Just to turn to the Frawley thing, it looks like a massive mistake to me moving Frawley on. They should have done whatever they needed to keep him, and they've made a few mistakes not picking him. I think not picking him on the weekend to start was a mistake. And I think not picking him to play against Ulster was also a mistake. Or Benetton. They should have played him. He should have started one of those games. I think they've left themselves in quite a risky position coming into that final, guys. Yeah, so I don't know. I just don't get why what the I'm not seeing the coach's vantage point. I know they're seeing him in training, but remember, training's not contact for most of the time, guys. The most important thing is he's got plenty of opportunity in matches. And that's where you really see what someone's about. Not in training, you know. I don't know. I feel awful. My heart's dropped saying I don't like. I'm actually hating this, but I just have to say I have to speak with listeners, and I've got to be honest. So that's it. Sorry.
It was very out of keeping with the rest of the game. Like, I loved this game. I thought what the Lions brought was exactly what you wanted from the South Africans in the URC. Like their attitude. Their attitude to contact, they just were flying into everything, and they had no respect for Leinster. They took the game to them. And if you think about the moment where Rabah Slimani absolutely levels one of them, and you can hear, I think it's John McKee on the ref mic going, "Yes, Rabah, yes." You can hear the energy that Leinster were getting off the contact because they were loving it. Like Dermot Mangan comes in. And like Dermot Mangan potentially puts himself in the frame for a Champions Cup final bench spot. I thought he was that good in terms of what he brought, in terms of his energy and his aggression and his work in contact and his handling, his ability to him slipping into 8. I thought that was a great spot from Bernard Jackman on the TV comms where he went into 8 to add that extra bit of ballast. That's a guy, like you're looking at a lot of those Leinster lads going, there's spots available on that bench, even for Sam Prendergast. He's not out of that 23 yet. Like, I think he probably is after the weekend, but like he had a chance there to put himself in that bench and be part of potentially a Champions Cup winning team for Leinster. And you can see that there's other players in the squad who are seeing that and going, I might not have much of a chance, but James Culhane, but I'm going to give everything I can to give myself the best possible chance. Scott Penny off the bench, really, really good. Loads of guys this time of year are starting. Jimmy O'Brien, absolutely
really good. He was involved.
Jimmy O'Brien was very, very good, lads. Brilliant. His skills at times, he just looks like a great. Do you know one of those guys you could nearly put him in anywhere? He's his skills and his some of the thinking, some of the positions he found himself. I thought he was brilliant. He's so committed as well.
He started 2 Champions Cup finals and played off the bench in the World Cup quarterfinal. He's played in a lot of big games. Between injuries and maybe a small bit of form dip, he hasn't really featured. Like, he hasn't been in my thoughts certainly as a kind of a.
That was a bad injury he got, Will. I think he got a neck injury. I think it's quite a serious one. Yeah,
but he also he's been playing since then. But I thought he was very good at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, and is in the frame, but I think when all's said and done, and everyone, you look at the injury list and
what's Lowe's status?
I don't think Lowe's going to make it. Okay. Based on what Leo Cullen said last week, he got back on the pitch last Thursday. I think Larmer did the warm up on Saturday, which suggests that he's fit for this
Larmer's
week.
Back fit. Do you know in the last 20 months, Larmer has made 9 appearances in 20 months. It's crazy. He played 5 games in 24-25 season. He played 4 games early this season. His last appearance was scoring 2 tries against Quins in the first Champions Cup game when he got injured. Like, I honestly think we've probably discussed him a couple of times in the last couple of years and just called him like the forgotten man, but he really is. Like, when I saw that he was back fit, I was like, Jesus, I hadn't even thought of him.
And like, he's a year younger than Porter and James Ryan. Like, he's not an old player, and like he was very close to leaving this year. He signed the new contract, but
saw him going to Connacht, wasn't there?
Connacht, his contract went around. A lot of coaches in Europe took a good look at him, but I'd say that injury record probably was a large part of why he didn't go.
He would have been good in Connacht.
Next year when they won't have an All Black. He would, but next year when they won't have an All Black, I think Jimmy O'Brien and Larmer will play a lot more minutes. But at the moment, their problem is that Rico Ioane has suddenly started playing really, really well, and absolutely will I think, start the final and deserves to start the final.
He's coming into it more, and
he's a big game player, guys. He's a big game player.
Last week,
saw what he did against Ireland in the quarterfinal. We saw what he did against Toulon. Like, he is built. He believes, and he's tough.
He has an attitude. I like that he's playing with an attitude. Like, he has a bit of a.
He looks like an All Black. He didn't for the first couple of months.
He wasn't playing like it, but he's carrying himself like it.
Yeah, first couple of months I didn't think he justified it at all. But like this is what he was signed for, and he has suddenly started living up to that billing, and that's all they signed him for. Like I criticised him about 6 weeks ago in print. Happy that he's kind of come out, and like it's nothing to do with me, but that he's come out and he's just every week he's now producing what Leinster pay. Like I'm sure he's on a big contract, but he's well worth it if he's going to.
But I do think, Rose, a big part of that has been that they've moved him to the wing for the most part in the big games. Like, and that's where, if you ask me, like, so he did a great job against Ireland defensively at 13, but you know. Really, what if you think about his running style, if you think about what kind of size of a man he is, if you think like the wing is where he probably is more naturally fitted to. You know, you think about his style. I wouldn't say he's like electric to start, but he's got a lovely, like when he gets the pace. Not that he's slower, but you know, he's really good when he's in stride. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of a winger's kind of pace for the most part, as far as I can see anyway. And he's a big man. He likes the contact. He, you know. When Toulon made a few big breaks, you could see him eating up the ground. He looked quick, he looked strong, he looked like he was in the fight. He was, he's made so few mistakes in the last few weeks, guys, and that to me is like, that's a big game player, because sometimes you don't have to. I feel like he's the kind of guy who could have a big moment in the final, having not had like a really, magical kind of moment, maybe leading up, like a really special moment. But I think he's a guy he's got the X factor in there that we probably just haven't seen, but he also has been playing really nice, solid, I would call it nearly cup rugby, just really reliable, dependable. He made the big tackles on the other side of the ball. He's due a big attacking moment for me. So glad you brought him up. I think I just, you're right. When you sign someone like him, and he was always going to be compared with Jordy Barrett, who, let's face it, I think is probably one of the best rugby players in the world. This guy isn't, I don't think he's in that upper echelon, but he's right below it. He's a top class international rugby player. And I think we're seeing that now, and very pleased for him, because I threw the boot in as well. I just didn't see it. And I think Leinster probably, his biggest problem was probably that, where he was being picked for the All Blacks was probably not really where Leinster needed him, if you know what I mean. It kind of messed Osborne around a little bit, which I think Osborne's future is probably in the centre. We didn't see as much of Cooney. Cooney looked pretty good when he came on, I thought. So I think Leinster didn't really want to pick him on the wings because they've got good depth there, but I think it's his best position.
Yeah. You love throwing the boot into Leinster.
Oh, yeah, as Leo said.
Jesus, yeah, I know.
Apparently, it was just as Rudd entered the press conference as well. Apparently, was when his kind of eye, his gaze steeled.
What is it about you, Rudd? You get under the skin, don't you?
I don't. I try not to ask myself that question.
So that's Leinster. They play the Ospreys at 5:15 on Saturday. We're expecting a lot of the big guns to play.
Yeah, it looks that way from training this morning. And what's probably more important from a Leinster point of view is that their injury update today, they had Tommy O'Brien and Larmer back available this week, but there's about 10 players there who are kind of back training and in the mix for down the line. One of them was Paddy McCarthy, who I think we all thought season was over. He can't play in the final. He's not registered. They deregistered him for Usanov. I presume, I don't know, that at the time was probably the right decision, but it could backfire on them. But Jack Honan's back, Henshaw and Van der Fleer are doing a return to play. Usanov could be available. I'm probably missing a few, but Conan's a big one. And even for the URC point of view, they're going to have a really strong squad in 2 or 3 weeks' time with all these players coming back.
We'll finish with Ulster and the Ireland women's match at the weekend. Ulster 38, Stormers 38. Absolute cracker of a game, first and foremost. Like, notwithstanding the implications it has for the table, like the Stormers getting the draw puts them in a good position if they can beat Cardiff to get a top 2 slot, potentially a top slot if depending on what happens in Ulster Glasgow. Ulster still probably need a win to make sure of their top 8 status. They obviously have the safety net of playing Montpellier in the Challenge Cup final. If they were to win that, they would steal a spot if they do finish outside the top 8. So that's worth remembering for Connacht. If Connacht finish 8th and Ulster finish 9th and Ulster beat Montpellier, Connacht don't go to the Champions Cup next year. Hat-trick for Verna Cock. a brace for Sasha Feinberg and Gamazulu. We mentioned the Ian Henderson red card in the first half, or the 20-minute red card. Nathan Doak, harsh at the end, but it was the right call. It was a high tackle, but God, it was a very good tackle as well. It just slipped slightly high, but to deny the Stormers winger in the corner, it looked like he had made a famous game-saving moment. Luke, anything in particular jump out to you about this one? I thought it was a brilliant game. Ulster, a tough one to take, because that would have basically sealed their top 8 place, I think, in reality. But now there's still a little bit of tidying up to do for them.
There's definitely some tidying up to do, and Glasgow will want to hang on to that top spot as well. That's a really tough fixture, so it's a tricky finish for them. I mean, look, they were very impressive, kind of similar to Leinster when they went down to that kind of when Henderson goes off. I mean, I thought they played some very nice rugby during that. I know they conceded the try, but they also scored a lovely one as well when he was off the pitch. So I mean, I was impressed with them. Thought Doak was outstanding, guys. I mean, some of the passes, I mean, the over the top ball to Koch was a bit of magic. They're playing nice rugby, but to me, still a little leaky defensively. I thought if they could just been a little bit stingier there, they come out on the right side of this one, and then we're not all, we're kind of, they don't have this kind of shaky finish against a very, very difficult Glasgow team, and Glasgow want to finish in those top 2 slots. It's kind of important. So I just think, they want to be a little bit careful about how they approach this one. And I think it won't be okay for them to. Sorry, I know they're never going to think like it's okay to. They might have the backstop of the Challenge Cup final, but they're missing a few bodies, so they don't have a full complement for the final either. So I don't know. They've got 2 shots at it, as far as I can see, to stay involved. And I think they are playing good rugby. I don't think they're playing as good rugby as Connacht, but pretty good all the same. And they're pretty fearsome, at home. So I think they might sneak it, but it's getting a little squeaky.
It is, Roddy, because if you're actually looking at it in the cold light of day, like, there's a good chance Ulster finish 9th and lose to Montpellier and don't get any Champions Cup or playoffs after what has been a very positive season. It's almost unfathomable that we could be in that position, and I'd feel so bad for everyone involved with Ulster and their supporters if it comes to pass. And I actually don't think that will happen. I do see them getting a result the next 2 weeks to get into that top 8 or the Champions Cup or winning that final. But it's a possibility which does not seem right or fair. But I flagged it a couple of weeks ago at the time. There was a couple of games they lost to Welsh teams. Scarlets in particular, the poor Ospreys won away from home as well. That they left points on the table when there was always going to be tough fixtures to come. Like, there's been so much positives even last Friday, but God, now it's a very hairy. Even how do they approach Glasgow? Even do they just say, look, let's save our bodies for that big game against Montpellier, where it's also a final? I don't know. There's a lot of decisions to be made.
Like, if you take what the Munster COO Philip Quinn said, it's worth €1 million for Munster to qualify for the Champions Cup. So you'd have to take that as read for all 4 provinces, maybe give or take a few gates. But it's a big prize, and from a business point of view, it's bigger than winning the Challenge Cup. I know you get you get qualification through that as well, but I think it's more the easier game, even though it's against Glasgow, is the home game. But it's a 6-day turnaround. You got a final the following week. You probably want to rest up bodies. And that's why that refereeing decision was so crucial, because they still would have had to get something out of this game, but those extra 2 points would have given them just a little bit more of a cushion. I think. Am I wrong on that? Would they have qualified?
Not literally, but it would require Cardiff beating the Stormers, which I just really don't see.
Yeah. Well, look, I think anything can happen in this final weekend.
That one.
Yeah. Look.
And I thought it was such a borderline call, and I'm not really sure what Nathan Doak's supposed to do on the goal line when, like, if he goes any lower, he doesn't stop the ball. Like, his whole idea is not.
But
to
it is a high tackle, isn't it? Like, it is.
I think on the goal line,
like, it's tough, but like, it is.
It reminds me of the West Ham Arsenal thing. I think if you go back and look at the final ruck or the final tackle in every incident, you're often going to come up with a foul. And I think in this regard, maybe technically, but like, I'm really not sure what Doak is supposed to do if he's going to try and chop a try. Like, he has to stay high to block the ball, and I didn't see head contact myself. Maybe just I didn't get the right replay, but it's just a harsh moment, because it was almost a perfect piece of defending, and that's just a difficult thing to count for. And then puts them in a bind this week, and if McCluskey doesn't make it back for a final, I think it'd be really harsh if Henderson's suspended and McCluskey's injured for Ulster's first European final since 2012. Like, just from a personal point of view, they're both players who've put an awful lot into the place. And I don't think McCluskey's going to make it. I'm not sure how Henderson's disciplinary stuff is going to go this week. So they're in a bind, and it's a difficult. I think Richie Murphy said a couple weeks ago he has a plan and he's going to stick to the plan, and he wasn't going to be affected by results. So I would expect him to rotate to some degree this weekend, but maybe not as much as he did for the Munster game.
And you were saying to me earlier, Stockdale could be back.
I've heard Stockdale and Ballacoon could be back, which would be
big.
And Ballacoon.
I've heard that's something I heard on the ether, which would be huge for them for the final, not for this week, but that'd be huge for them if they can get those two back. I think Postlethwaite's playing brilliant rugby, so he's very good Stuart McCluskey impression, but
good player.
He was very good last week, Rhodes, as well. He was really, really good, wasn't he? We were kind of shouting him out in the podcast, just getting the hands free, dominating the contact. He's a big boy, isn't he? Look, just to talk, I would, be awful to see Henderson miss the final. I really would. I really hope that he doesn't. I know it seems like silly, but should you be able to take something like that into account, like a bit of common sense?
Come on,
no, am I being too soft?
You are being too soft
because it wasn't nasty, but to me it's a red. But is it like a ban? Is it a ban? I don't know if it's a ban. It feels like it's I don't know.
Especially this time of the season, the games are so big. I know this isn't the way it works, but it's like if this Friday night is way bigger than a round 4 URC game, and obviously the following Friday is huge for Ulster, but it doesn't come into it. It's not the way they think about it. He just needs to bring some biscuits, wear a nice suit, and hope for the best.
Hopefully he gets like what would it be, like a three match ban, reduced by 50% for good behaviour, go to tackle school. I don't know, get it down to 1 week.
I think he's got a few bans in the past.
I think he'll miss the final.
I don't think maybe the further offences, maybe that'll mitigate it, but I'd be worried about him.
You were saying to me earlier, I was talking about Werner Koch, and you're saying he looks like he's leaving at the end of the season, which is a shame.
There's nothing announced yet, and all the word is that I'm not sure they'd be allowed to keep him because they've got so many Irish qualified wingers. But
he's such a good watch. Like he's all action. He's all action. He's always in the thick of it. Like he's been a real fan favourite, I think.
And Richie hasn't been picking him. If Ballacoon, Zach Ward, and Stockdale are fit, Richie's not picking him, so it's not like he's blocking Irish lads getting in. Maybe he's blocking some younger guys. But he's the kind of guy that I think
people go to see players like that.
That's important.
And I do think it's important. So Ulster, Glasgow on Friday night. Let's finish up with the Ireland 33, Wales 12 and the Women's Six Nations, their second win of the tournament. Scotland, the Aviva Stadium on Sunday, Rud, 2:30 p.m. I think 25,000 tickets or so have been sold.
26, I think.
26,000 now. Kind of last weekend, really kind of just ensconced Ireland as they are the third best team in this tournament. Obviously, I know they slipped up at the end of last year's tournament when it looked like they were in a similar position, but they look well primed to finish on a high in front of a good crowd. Like 19-7 up at half time. Beautiful try from Bevan Parsons, like the little side door offload from Aoife Wafer, and then the power game from Wafer, and Brittany Hogan kind of told the day. But like, even though the France game was disappointing, they couldn't take that next step. It's still been I'm still pretty positive about what I've seen from them. I don't know what you think.
I know it's been a good effort. Like the years where they're away to England and France are very, very difficult. There was a bit of a theory at the start. The best time to get England was first. The way England are going, they're losing bodies left, right, and centre. England are starting to look a little bit more vulnerable, and I wonder if Ireland, having had the games under the belt, would fancy a crack off them this weekend. But the way it's worked out, they had their away games in rounds 1 and 3. They gave it a really, like, that France game was just everything that the Women's Six Nations could be. Under lights at the Marcel Michelin, big crowd, great game, proper contest, and Ireland just came out the wrong side of it, didn't take their chances. And when they go up against Wales, like, Wales caused them problems. It was a good game. It was competitive, but like, Ireland were really, they just look very cohesive. They look well coached, and they have an exceptional player in Aoife Wafer, and they have a very good support cast around her. We fixated on it. Well, we honed in on a couple of disciplinary decisions. The big one for me is, I don't know how clean Lonnie McDonald didn't get a red card for kicking an opponent on the ground. She picked up a yellow, and I just, like, when we look at the kind of technical infringements that are leading to reds in the men's games we talked about, and then you kick someone on the ground, I can't understand how that's proper foul play. But she got away with it. They wrote it out. They kind of, Wafer makes a big break, and Wales get a yellow card, and it's 14 against 14 for the majority of the period, and they kind of kicked on from there. And they're looking good, and I think they'll be satisfied with 3 from 5. They were going for a fourth in France. They didn't get it. but they lost it the right way, if you know what I mean. They didn't get, they did themselves
competed.
justice. Yeah, did themselves
They
justice.
competed well. Yeah.
And they're going in the right direction, and their age profile is still very good. So, like, the talk of having a team in PWR is encouraging as well. I think they need to get more players to play at that level on a regular basis. So that could be a good thing next season. Maybe it won't be next season, but they're talking about putting an Irish franchise into the English League. That the more these players play at this level, the better they're becoming, and you can see it with Wafer, the English-based players, and you can see like Parsons needs they need a stage. They need like the problem is with rugby, they're going to get like 30,000 this weekend. There was a poor crowd in Ravenhill last week, but like after Saturday, the people who go, like, when will they get to see them next? And that's always been
almost waiting a year pretty much for the France games for most casual supporters.
Yeah, but look, if they get 30,000 to a home game, which has never happened before, that's really positive.
That's a great way to finish out the tournament. As we said, like the France game was the one we were all looking forward to. They didn't get out on the right side of that result, but finishing with 2 big home wins is nothing to pass up. And 26, 27,000 or even 30,000 will be great on Sunday. And then, as I said, on Friday night we have Connacht Edinburgh. In Edinburgh we have Ulster hosting Glasgow. 5:15 Saturday, Leinster Ospreys, and then Munster Lions on 7:45 on Saturday, finishing us out for the URC regular season. And then it is into Challenge and Champions Cup finals the following week. So that is that for tonight on the Left Wing Podcast. Big thanks to Luke for joining me. Big thanks to Rudd for joining me. We'll be back next week. Until then, thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.